I think anybody who will use this work will see the difference in their child.
I liked the most when we were doing about the hearts, and because I could learn more about shining my heart.
To be raised soaking in the spirituality behind all of the rituals and acts of belief. We want to teach them how to pray, and we want them to love the prayer.
We never really talk about polishing the heart. We never talk about the spirit of a person. We really focus on very external behavior. What the Ghazali Project talks about and deals with is educating the spirit, educating the heart, educating the entire individual.
Growing up, I learned all the external things which were very fear-based. Learning the religion through Imam Ghazali's work has given me that deeper meaning of the religion.
Education and tarbiyah are two very different things. Tarbiyah is about providing human beings with the maintenance of their innate goodness, which is from the fitrah.
Reconciling this split between knowledge with character building, ta'aleem and tarbiyah.
Emotional intelligence, which comes to the heart, spiritualizing action. The Ghazali Project speaks directly to that.
Personally, it's changed my dynamic and my relationship with my children. It gives us a language to communicate.
So that's pretty much why I'm addicted to the series. They're not like a torture workbook. They're not like that homework that your teacher assigns you every day. They're actually really fun.
I've seen the transformation in our own curriculum and in our own outcomes. Our kids are excited to go to class. It's just amazing listening to them talk about who God is and what God made.
It's also about you embodying that. I have to live that in order to teach that as well.
Ghazali as a basic theme and his great work, The Revival of the Religious Sciences, is one of the most important literary, cultural, religious projects that one could imagine in the 21st century.
By really showing their golden hearts, that concept has just blossomed into a whole school culture. The wudu time and the wudu experience has transformed. The prayer experience has completely transformed. We see the students who are making their own adhan and coming calmly into the prayer space, sitting down, praying, staying focused. It's been a very, very transformative and beautiful experience.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My wonderful brothers and sisters, I'm deeply honored to be with you today. We're all concerned with education, and what I plan to do is talk a little bit about what we find are the needs for a project like the Ghazali Children's Project. Then I'd like to give you the history or the background behind it. And lastly, I thought, we can say all these things. Oh, the Ghazali Project teaches humility, generosity. That's pretty abstract. So I'm going to take you through each of the books and the workbooks with just a slide or two from each one to give you an actual experience about how these ideas that we need our children to take on in their inner lives could possibly be transmitted. And then we would have some questions and answers and joining together. So let's just say this. If we look at what, I'm going to read this because I want to say it right. One of the greatest educational challenges in upbringing children today has arisen from the all-pervasive Western media culture and its underlying materialistic worldview. The more you have, the better you are. The social media, the TV, and the films that fill children's lives today often leave them with a sense of the violence and the trials and the disappointments, and that their lives are without purpose. And often we don't have the traditional family, the grandmother around to be showing them. And it's really shocking to hear how many young people are suicidal, perhaps not in the Muslim world. But the problem is, from the way I see it, is that young people no longer feel they have a real sense of identity, who they truly are. And they don't have an ability or means to identify and align themselves with their inner dignity and their innate goodness. Let's look at the word education. In that word comes from the Latin educare. And that doesn't mean, it means draw out that which is already there. It doesn't mean pile in more information. And so what is it at the outset of Ghazali's work, at the beginning? What Imam al-Ghazālī provides at the outset of his 40 books is an explanation of the true identity of humankind, the fitra, followed by a clear plan of how to maintain the purity and dignity of that core essence, referred to with the metaphor of the spiritual or the golden heart. In short, he provides both purpose and meaning for every aspect of our life's journey. Now, this heart point is so important that I'm going to read you something that Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad of Cambridge has said about the heart. If the Quran tells us that the heart is the essence of man, so that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his ascension saw the highest perfection with his heart, Quran 53, and if revelation itself descended on his heart, then the heart is the unique interface between the eternal and the finite realms. Look what our heart is. That's the cross between the eternal and the world we now live in. The care of and identification with this spiritual heart underlies the entire practice of our faith and Ghazali's teaching, so needed by all of us in these times of distraction and distress. You know, we really have to ask ourselves, who are we really? And we aren't just our momentary packaging, our persona, our narrative. I'm Gray Henry from Louisville, Kentucky. You know, that's not who we are. We are underneath, we are that essence, that presence of heart. And this is so important that the young, and we too, identify and act out of that place rather than through the prejudice and judgments and everything that come from our particular packaging. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is give you a little background for what we can call here the Ghazali story, right? It started over 50 years ago, over a half a century ago, in 1966, when I went to, having graduated, I'm trying to make this go. I graduated studying world religions at Sarah Lawrence in New York in 65. And they didn't include Islam in the curriculum back then. And I wanted very much to find a way or a path, a way to return to God. And as it so happened, a year or so later, in 66 or so, in the New York Public Library, I happened to read al-Ghazali's Munqidh min ad-Dalal, his Deliverance from Error, his autobiography. And as I was reading it, when he admitted that he was finding himself on a crumbling bank, and we're all on a crumbling bank if we're identifying with our worldly life and our careers, right? And then he pleaded with himself and he said, up and away, if not now, when? And when I heard that, I mean, I'm crying now. I was just overwhelmed. That's exactly the situation. And how long do we all keep delaying being who we truly are, i.e., acting from our hearts rather than from our packaging, being completely present? So after sort of a year or so, my husband and I sailed on a freighter to Tangiers and drove all the way to Cairo to take up scholarships that were offered. And so when we arrived at Azhar, we studied Tajweed and Ahadith. But I have to say that it was the Egyptian people and their presence, the traditional generosity, their kindness, how they taught us. And I have to say, I want to thank the people that we came to know in Egypt, Arabia, Jordan, Algeria, Libya. I mean, what can I say? They were the teachers, but they were teaching the Sunnah because they were acting by the imitation of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And so all during the Cairo years, I read more and more Ghazali. And there was something he said. He said, we all have three needs. The first is food, the second is clothing, and the last is shelter. And he said, in over addressing and refining our response to these three needs, we have forgotten our beginning and our end. I mean, look at the food situation. Are we eating the simple things that nourish us, or is it gone beyond belief? The clothing thing is out of control. And look at the shelters, the redecoration, the over refinement. And you can see how much time these things take away from any worship, because they all take tons of time to do. And then even you have things you have to protect and care for them. So then in 1979, we moved from Cairo to Cambridge and opened up the Islamic Text Society. And we had a little bookstore downstairs. We called it the Green Street Bookshop because we were on Green Street. And the Text Society was our response to the fact that all the material on Islam that we ever read was all produced by Orientalists, Mustashriqeen, or there were sort of really crummy, poorly produced books that came from here and there. And so the idea was to get great scholars to begin to translate the Islamic heritage into a beautiful and wonderful form. Now, one of the first books we did was Abdul Hakim Winter translated for us the last book of Ghazali's Ihya al-Ulumuddin, book 40, the book of death and what comes after. And it's interesting. And this was the beginning of the Ghazali series. This is how it began. And I just have to say a little aside, Abdul Hakim Murad, who founded the Cambridge Muslim College not so long ago, which is a superb university in Cambridge, also built, I think, what I would say is the most beautiful modern mosque I've ever seen today. It's an echo mosque. And believe it or not, in his echo mosque, they have a Ghazali school with our Ghazali project. And the first 200 families that applied are now studying there. So, I mean, I think that's pretty exciting anyway. And so then in 1990, 89, 90, I had to move home to Kentucky to care for my aging and dying parents. And so I opened Fons Vitae, and Fons Vitae just continues the work of the Text Society, but also includes world spirituality. But we have continued, you know, of course, working in parallel with the Islamic Text Society in bringing out the Ghazali books. And I would like to tell all of you, this is incredibly exciting news. I feared that I would die without ever having read all 40 in the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, but in fact, they are all translated. And now we're able to bring out about 3 a year because the editing is extremely, you have to be so careful. How dare one word of Imam al-Ghazālī be mistranslated? Now you can see in 2011, see right here, this series in Arabic. The Dar al-Manhaj Press in Jeddah brought out the best critical edition of Ghazali in Arabic. And so Hamza Yusuf, when he called and suggested that we actually bring out the Ghazali for children, because his children were in school and he felt that it wasn't working out their Islamic education. So we would start the Ghazali project using this incredible edition from Dar al-Manhaj. Let me just move ahead here. This is in Sarajevo, standing in front of the Ghazali manuscript. The Ihya al-Ulumuddin, right, is regarded in the Muslim world over the centuries as the greatest compendium of Islamic spirituality and ethical behavior for everyday life. The Ihya lays down practical teachings and explains how the outer aspects of Islam can, through their inner spiritually transformative meanings, right, change every situation into one that strengthens the innate human nobility of character. You can even see Imam al-Ghazālī's signature. Look at that right there. Muhammad, this is too beautiful, right? The Prophet Muhammad said, peace and blessings be upon him, I was sent only to perfect good character. And Hamza Yusuf pointed out something about the Ihya al-Ulumuddin. He said, in a sense, it's the Quran in a usable order. Because if we're just given here and there a passage from the Quran or a hadith, that's wonderful. But imagine if all of those, for every stage of the journey, starting with knowledge to purification to prayer, if each degree of the journey has with it a selection of hadith and Quranic passages, which Ghazali himself chose, you're getting this material concentrated around your very journey. So just to let you know, we first reached out for book one, the Kitab al-Ilm, to Abdul Hadi Honorkamp. And he said, oh, to do the Kitab al-Ilm, the book of knowledge, I mean, it's almost too much. It is considered to contain all the 40 books. And very profound. And at first he didn't know that he could take it on. But in the end he did. And we have to remind you that it's not just any translator that can translate Ghazali. It has to be someone who, in him or herself, they are traveling the inner life so that they know what he's saying. You can't get someone who translates computer manuals to translate Ghazali, unless, of course, they have that inner aptitude. So with Abdul Hadi Honorkamp and the Book of Knowledge, the entire process began. Let me get to my next picture here. Now, here are some of the books that have come out so far in this, starting from one, because with the Tech Society, starting with 40 and jumping this way and that, we've been bringing out things that weren't in order, but here, starting with book 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So here's how the process went. When a manuscript would come, let's say for the Book of Knowledge, and it would go into the long editing process of at least 2 years, checking every single word and reference, I would take that manuscript and I would read it and circle every key idea and a selection of Imam al-Ghazālī's choices of supportive scripture. And after I collected all of these ideas in his exact order, then what the idea would be, how could these be said in a language which children could understand and enjoy? And really, books 1 and 2 are very foundational principles. I tried to make them as simple as possible. But I just want to say, you think this stuff is just for children? It's really for us as adults. You know, occasionally I've gone back and tried to read, for example, book 40, and it's way over my head. So scholarly with so much scripture that it was hard for me to stay with it. But we, with the children's series, have pulled out the ideas. Many people say they read the children's book and then they go and try to read the adult's book afterward. So in 2014, I came to Dubai, and we had gotten really book 1 and book 2 written and partially illustrated. And some friends in Dubai actually founded the project in such a way that we were able to present the first 2 books to the John Templeton Foundation in Philadelphia. And we were able to get a grant just under $1 million and had to raise another $500,000 because working with scholars and illustrators and printing, you have no idea the effort and cost. But by 2018, we had everything you see out except the Book of Pilgrimage at the bottom right. And the Book of Hajj was written during COVID, and then we did a launch good, and the Ummah came in and paid for the printing. So
since 1966, this is what it's taken to reach today. So it's interesting for you to see a story like this that goes over half a century. The Ghazali Children's Series was created to provide authentic quality guidance for children of all ages at a time when their values are being formed. Imam al-Ghazālī's systematic approach for developing character is provided in an educational package, which includes beautifully produced children's books. And now we're starting to have these as audiobooks as well. Some wonderful Muslims in Germany spent, I can't tell you how long, reading beautifully the whole book of knowledge. So when parents are traveling in the car or they want a bedtime story for their children, it's on audiobook. And as you can see, each book comes with a workbook and also with the source text. So the parent may want to go back and read the source text itself. And all of this is supported by an incredible team of recognized Islamic scholars, ranging from Dr. Mustafa Abu Sway from Jerusalem, Dr. Ingrid Mattson of Hartford Seminary, the head of ISNA, one of the greatest Islamic scholars, and of course, Hamza Yusuf and many others. Now, let me do the next. Also, you saw earlier in that wonderful video piece, the website that was built with the heart going along happily and then jumping out, or greed and anger, and he polishes it off. And this website is an interactive website, which let me just an interactive website for children and for parents. It has a parent-teacher resource place, and there are flip books that children can go and read, and then there also the videos children have made and sent in can be seen. There are art, places where they can read Imam al-Ghazālī's life. So this website is one that we are inviting the entire global Muslim Ghazali family to contribute to. When children send in art, we can put it on. And one of my dreams is that we finally are united globally, the Muslim world. We can have big Zoom congresses and so on. And what will be the subject? The education of our children and ourselves. I mean, one day I did a Zoom talk to 200 families in Indonesia. It was just amazing what can be done now. Let's see what else. And of course, we have, I don't know how many hundreds of Ghazali schools have sprung up around the world. Here is the Hub Club, and there's an entire video you can see on them. A wonderful school founded by Dr. Adiba Ahmed in Solihull, not far from Birmingham. And then during COVID, they created their Radiant Hearts program, where children all over the world could attend lessons. They have them in all 3 age groups. And this school is one of many, but it's utterly extraordinary. Now, you've heard about this heart. We have 2 practices which I think are extremely important. We ask the children to draw their own golden heart, and then to put dots on it, or someone here has just written it along the side, of things that they wish to polish off. And this helps make it something that they can look at. It's just not thoughts in their head, like I should quit yelling in the movies or something like that. It gives them something that they can look at, and it's very objective. It's like, I have a yellow legal pad over on the counter. My office is here in the kitchen, and I have all the things that I must do. And then it feels great when I can strike one off. But if I don't have the list, I have this kind of uncomfortable feeling that everything's out of control. But it helps very much if the children have their heart. One little boy did a really incredible golden heart with Velcro dots to put on, which he would take on and off. Regarding the heart, everyone, being able to visualize what you have to do is much easier than just having these ideas tucked away among your thoughts. And so this is a really great tool that we've given our. Oh, I want to tell you all, do you know of the great al-Muhasibi? Al-Muhasibi took hisab. He made an addition every evening. Al-Muhasibi, each night, he wrote everything he had done during the day, and he looked at it carefully and knew, I want to stop doing this or that. Regarding the purification of both the outward and inward, al-Ghazālī wrote that one should know with certitude that the purification of the heart comes through ridding the soul of its vices and reforming it with virtue, and that a person who stops at outward purification alone is like someone who wants to invite a king to his home, then busies himself with decorating its front door and leaving the inside full of rubbish and debris. So here you have children who have built a castle and they've decorated it, and then they threw garbage inside, and then they came dressed as a king and queen and were shocked to find that the house they were visiting that looked so beautiful on the outside was full of garbage on the inside. And the children too were able to relate this to what Imam al-Ghazālī says about how we are on the outside. We may look perfectly beautiful on the outside, but what about the inside? So another key practice in the Ghazali school project, besides the drawing of the heart, is play acting. And I can't tell you how important this is, because what the children do is, and they do little videos of this, is first they do the wrong thing, and then they realize that they play acted doing the wrong thing, and then they think, what have we done? In this one, these little girls are doing cartwheels and they break their mother's favorite vase. And then the mother comes in and says, who broke my vase? And they're pointing to the little boy here and saying, he did. And he's saying, no. And then they think, oh, we lied. And they go to their mother and say, oh, we're so sorry. One of my favorite ones was a little girl from Sialkot, Pakistan, dressed in a beautiful silver sequin dress with her peacocks. And she took her dolls and had a doll car. They would go and visit another doll and then complain about her food as they left. And then they realized, oh, we're backbiting. We have to go back. We have to go back and apologize. So what happens in this case of play acting is that children learn to experience, not just be told you shouldn't. Let's say you say to your children, you should share. Well, when your mother says you should share, the first thought is, if she's saying it, it must be not fun, right? But what we would do is we'd have two children playing, you can't have my truck, you can't have my, and going back and forth and having fun, not sharing. And then they would suddenly be told, now play act sharing. Would you like to hold my truck? Would you like to have a cookie? And they can feel, even I just felt it just now, they can feel, oh, that actually felt good. It wasn't hard to do. I didn't lose anything by it. Let's even take arguing, which children, maybe we could have a scene where the children are listening to their parents arguing and saying it's horrible. And then suddenly they're arguing with each other. And Imam al-Ghazālī points out, when you argue, you're basically saying, I'm right, you're wrong. You're ignorant of the reality of the truth of the situation. And you're trying to overpower the other. Now, which self is that strengthening? That is congealing the nafs, the lower, finally not real self. But when you do the right thing, you can, the child and any of us can feel, it's coming from the heart. And what are we doing here? We're actually practicing the sunnah. In the case of the sunnah, we put the other person first. If you don't argue, you're putting the other person first. If you're not angry, if you're not lying, you're actually putting the other person first. And I just have to tell you a story that had a huge effect on my life. I have a friend who is a professor in a university, and her daughter was born with spina bifida. And the husband left. And in the end, during school, when she was teaching, several times a day, her daughter's school would call several times a week and say, oh, your daughter has had a seizure. She's peed on herself. Come get her. And my friend said every time the phone rang, she started to think, oh, no, not again. And then she thought, would the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would he ever think, oh, no, not again? No, he would let me help immediately. So how do you get yourself from the point of view of things are not convenient when people need help, how would you get to a point where you could immediately, from your true fitra, do the right thing? Well, the point is, if you start practicing all of these right things and giving children the chance to actually experience them, then they understand them, because it's not a concept, it's not a rule, it's not a dictum. I even thought something, a game that children could play would be to have someone pretending to be the old wonderful grandfather, and then the children run to the grandfather. They could make a film of it and say, "We need your help. We're really upset. Please, we're coming to you." And then the grandfather would say, "Well, actually, I don't have time for you right now." And if they play acted that, they would realize how awful it is if someone puts a situation off because it's not convenient. So this whole idea of play acting is something that we find to be extremely, extremely important. And it helps children to experience the real self doing the right thing. I remember we have a group, and my sister Lubna was part of it, particularly during COVID. We met on Sundays, people ages 5 years old to 80, from New York, from Bosnia, Turks, England, Dubai. We were all online together, and we were going through the lessons. The children loved the fact that the older people also admitted they were having problems with anger. And then you start to realize that we're all the same age. A 10-year-old, an 80-year-old, a 50-year-old, we're all addressing the same issues, and children understand everything perfectly. And so we talked about the problem of not putting the other person first. And little Medina raised her hand and said, at school this week, we had a treasure hunt, and I was running with my friend to get the clue, and we were about to win, and her shoestrings came undone. And she said, I didn't go on racing to get the next clue. I stayed with my friend, and I put her first. So children who are so sensitive to truths, little children can't stand lying. They get upset by it. And then they're in a world where everybody is lying and doing different things, and they finally join in. But I just wanted to say that this whole, it's fun for children to actually make films. And that's something you can do with your children as well. The teachings have to engage the imagination and spirit of children and attract their enjoyment and love. A child needs to be handed back his or her dignity and religion in such a way that he or she can understand what it's really for, and therefore consciously desire to keep their innate goodness and character intact. The Ghazali project really makes deep concepts accessible and easy to live and grow by. You heard Yusuf Kasewitz speaking earlier. He said the Ghazali project gives parents a language with which they can communicate with their children. Many parents don't know how to convey ideas, but Ghazali provides us with a map for all ages. So currently, the books have gone into many languages, even Kazakh. They're going into Kazakh. And you can see here, there's the Arabic and the German and the Spanish. The Spanish is completely done, Indonesian, and the Urdu. And of course, the Urdu was so beautifully done, I started copying some of their illustrations in our books. And then the Ghazali Festival. My son Mustafa and I went to South Africa, and in 4 different cities, we did 26 presentations. And I can't tell you how exciting it was to meet the enormous community in Cape Town, Durban, Pretoria, and Johannesburg. And the project has been presented really in many, many countries, Indonesia, Great Britain, all over. But a particular beautiful one was under the auspices of the King of Morocco. They did a several-day event honoring Fons Vitae for our preservation of Islamic spiritual heritage in the West. And they brought scholars from all over, and the Ghazali project was presented there. And I just was very touched to see that kind of recognition. Oh, in Gambia, oh, how wonderful Gambia. People love the Ghazali project in Gambia. And we've also been able to give many of the volumes to an orphanage there. Jakarta also, we deal with two groups, the new NU, the I forgot how to say that in Indonesian, and also the Muhammadiyah groups. And these are two gigantic educational groups in Indonesia who are very much in love with Ghazali. Now, I just want to say something that makes me particularly happy. We have a huge prison outreach project. We give books to prisoners and they write for them. And I've even gone and given lectures on Ghazali in a prison, and they loved it, you know. And one of the exciting things is that as of last December, we're working with the head of the United Nations High Commission for Refugees in Jordan, because the Arabic edition, now we have book 1 and 2 in Arabic, where the idea is we have someone to help fund an entire special edition for the Syrian refugee camps. And the idea is, and you'll see very carefully right now why, that if the children are presented this material in the right way, they would be able, inshallah, to more easily reframe their incredible trials. Imagine growing up in a refugee camp with no hope, perhaps, of ever leaving. So the Ghazali children's material gives children and their parents a way to reframe what they're going through as an opportunity for the heart. So now we're going to look at some of the books. All right, this is a little Saudi Arabian girl, lovely. I'm going to pretend, let's say I'm looking at little Sarah here, and I did this with my granddaughter Layla while I was writing book 1. We were in Cairo, and Ghazali opens the book of knowledge by asking the following thing. All right, so I'll pretend you all are children. Did you know that there are two kinds of learning? And they look up. Yes, there's regular practical learning, all the things you're learning in school, but then there's the real learning, the special learning. And then the child thinks, well, what's that? That sounds pretty good. Oh, that is how to polish your heart. And then the child looks confused. Oh, you didn't know there are two hearts? There's the one that beats in the blood and you cut your finger, but then there's your real heart, your golden heart. Here Sarah is holding it, you see. Who you really are. That's who you are. You're the golden heart, right? And then they say, and the real learning is how to polish that heart. And then the child looks confused, like, why would I even have to do that to keep it clean? Oh, you didn't know there are two worlds. There's this world we're in, right? And then there's the eternal heavenly realm, right? And in order to go there, right, you want to have your heart polished and clean, reflecting that divine light. So what you've done to that child is you've said, your real nature is your golden heart. That's who you are. And by the way, there are going to be problems in your life and disappointments. Those are opportunities to keep this beautiful heart shining and beautiful. And you don't have to worry about death, because in the end, everything returns to the heavenly paradisal realm of God, right? So then my little granddaughter went in our living room, and her father was playing the harpsichord, and she asked about it. And he said, well, this was written by Bach, a composer who died about 250 years ago. And Layla put her fists on her hips like this, and she said, Dad, he's not dead. He's not dead. He's in the next realm. So even in that little instant, and you know, whenever my grandchildren start to do something, I said, the heart, they polish the heart. What you do by giving the children, that's a plan for life for all of us, right? To remember who we really are and act from it, to actually see all of our trials as opportunities to keep the heart polished and to polish it, and to not worry about the next realm. We don't have to be afraid. And so Ghazali opens by giving a game plan. And if you have this game plan with your children, you can constantly refer to it when they do terrible things. Then there's the question of trusting Allah. Tawakkalna ala Allah. How can you really trust him? And Ghazali tells a story, which is kind of difficult, about the ant in the pen. And you see, the ant represents us, and the writing is what's going on in our life right now. What's going on around me is the writing. And that is coming, the ant thinks it's coming from the pen, but what is holding the pen and what is the arm that's holding that? We can't see when things happen, except, oh, the reason we're late is there was a car accident down the street. Is that just it? Or was that car accident to prevent from something else from happening? So we came up with a story for children. I kept ants as the motif, which is the following. Once upon a time, there was an ant family, and the parents told the baby ants, we're going to the zoo on Saturday. And then they said, oh, we're sorry, we're not going. The relatives are coming. And of course, the baby ants do what all children do. Oh, but you promised we were going. And they began moping. And then there they were. The relatives were there all day. And when the relatives left, they put on ant radio, and they heard that, in fact, a lion had gotten out of the zoo, and there was terrible terror at the zoo. So the father said to the baby ants, you see, Allah loved us so much, he sent us the relatives to protect us from going to the zoo. And so in my own life, my little grandson Bilal and Medina, we were going to take them out on the river. I live by the Ohio River, and my husband was organizing getting the boat out and getting all the life preservers. And it was a huge thing. Everyone looked forward to it. And the day of the trip, Bilal was sick, so we had to cancel the trip. And then I went over to see him, and I said, Bilal, you won't believe this. Alhamdulillah, you were sick and we canceled the trip, because on the day we would have been out, washing down from Cincinnati were trees and mud. There'd been storms upriver. And I didn't think he remembered that. He was very little. But I later heard him referring and explaining to other children, you know, when things happen, and he told them the story of his illness. So sometimes you think the children don't hear, but they hear everything. Here's just a girl drawing her heart. And she says, and here's now the story. She says, I used to wipe away. I need to wipe away so my heart will shine without dust or dirt. This little boy, I took this picture in Jeddah. We were talking about polishing the heart, and he was doing his heart. And I said, what are you polishing off? He said that I shouldn't be so loud and bad in the cinema. And his mother was standing there, and she was like shocked. She said for years she'd be telling him when she took him to the movies not to be so loud, but she didn't know he ever heard her. And here, when he was doing his heart, he knew exactly what he was doing wrong. I heard little Bilal, when he was working on his heart one time, he said, and this is for not minding mommy, and this is for being so loud. They hear everything we say, but they don't let us know that. But honestly, they do know, and if they have a heart to work on, it helps them. You know, the chapter on backbiting, I rewrote it 23 times. It was so horrific. And the night I finished writing it, I had gone out to dinner with some friends, and they were all talking about one of our friends' fathers, and who was a horrible person. And I added in my horrible, funny story. And coming home in the car, I felt sick at my stomach, and I rushed into the house and I threw up. You know, when Allah says in the Quran that it's like eating a person's dead flesh, it's more than a metaphor. It's really true. And one day a mother called me and she said, I was doing a ladies' party, and my little daughter, Lena, she came up and whispered, Mom, are you all backbiting? I said, let me speak to Lena. So Lena got on the phone and she said, Auntie, you know, until I read the chapter on backbiting in Ghazali, I wasn't aware of that. And she said, and I said, you know, isn't that amazing? It's one of the worst things we can do. And parents aren't making a big deal about it, nor being role models, because we have to bring up the subject. If you tell the children don't backbite, and then you do it all the time, what are they going to be imitating? This Ghazali ends the book of knowledge with this incredible image. We are all teachers. Whatever we do, people are copying. And he says, you should ask yourself before you do anything, would I like this copied, what I'm doing right now? Isn't that interesting? And he uses the metaphor of the two trees. There's a crooked tree and a straight tree. He said, which are you? What kind of shadow are you casting? Here is just a page where the children start looking at the two different kinds of heart. There's an incredible hadith that says that the ants and the whales pray for the teacher who teaches what is good, and also angels stroke them. Now, children, when they do this drawing, the drawings we got that children did of ants and fish and angels praying for the teacher, children's art is amazing. So they get to draw all of these things, and it becomes much more living for them. And when they send this art in, we're so happy to display it. This is the first. It's a double page spread. This is the first page where the little heart takes off in the journey of life. And there it is, facing pride and bragging and backbiting, hypocrisy and arguing. This idea, this image came from my friend in Riyadh, Maha Faisal. And so we had that piece of art done. Okay, very, very important. Imagine giving a child the whole understanding of the nafs al-amara, the nafs al-lawama, and the nafs al-mutma'inna. They need it. They need to understand how the self is broken down. How can you expect a child to take on himself if he or she doesn't understand what the setup is here? Here's an example that they can identify with. They're lying in bed and their mother is trying to get them up from school. The lower self says, I'm going to pretend to be asleep. And then the real self is watching the low self trying to win out. And the scolding self says, I should really get up and please mother. I mean, isn't that amazing that you can give a tiny child access to something I only learned about very late in life? And then this particular workbook, this is a wonderful comic series done by a great Egyptian artist called Farida. And now we come to the book Kitab al-Aqidah, the book of creed and belief. All right, everyone, parents, if your child came to you and said to you, who and what and where is God? Could you actually answer that question in a way that, could you answer? I mean, I don't think I could, but Ghazali does it so simply that even the Azhar took our children's book on the creed and put it into Arabic, and an Imam in Birmingham started using it in adult classes. Of course, in the book of creed, you hear about crossing the bridge and the scales waiting for you. So one of the activities children do are make scales and put little pieces of paper, good things they've done and bad things they've done. So they start having an experience of the scale. Oh, here's their workbook. Okay, here's something that they can color, which helps them to visualize what they're washing off. These are more comic strips, because we're told that there is the great pool, the Haud al-Mawrud, and the watering basin, and there is many jugs around it, as there are stars. And so the little girl is thinking, I wonder if I'll be good enough for there to be one of those jugs for me. And the same Farida, I'm only going to show you part of it. She did a comic strip, What is the Meaning of Life? And she has many questions. My life in 4 steps: eat, sleep, work, watch TV. I'm like a hamster. Is it for money? Is it for fame? Is it for love? Do I get to take it all with me when I die? And then, of course, the next line is, let's ask al-Ghazālī. Here's the book of purification. Oh, I want to say one more thing about the book of creed. One of the little boys, he made a film of this out of Legos. He made a little car and he's pushing it along and it crashes into a tree. And then the next thing he has is he's dead. So he has a little Lego grave with himself lying in the grave and 2 Lego questioners questioning him about what he did. And he made it into a little movie by moving his Legos. I mean, the things children come up with are extraordinary. Book of purification. I made the end papers utterly beautiful. As you see, I did Moroccan tiles for water for the end papers, because it's important that our religion is based on a book, a kitab, And so our books should be beautiful and elegant. These are very big books. I'm sure you have a set there. And I wanted even the end papers to be extraordinary. Now, the storyline, starting with the Book of Purification onward, is a group of children are going home from school one day, and they're saying, talking among themselves, I don't know why Mother is so angry that I'm missing prayers. I don't even know why we have to pray, right? We're just told we have to do it. And then they pass a garden that's forgotten, and they go in and it's beautiful. And they think, why don't we come home from school, on our way home from school a few times a week, and we'll come in and discuss our questions. But who will answer our questions? And then they realize there's an old, beautiful man who sits in the Midan, in the park, every day, and he has squirrels and birds on him because he has no nafs. There's nothing to scare away the animals. And he's called Hajj Abdullah, i.e. has made the pilgrimage, and he is Abdullah. And so they go and they say, would you come to our garden a couple of times a week and answer our questions? And he said, yes, my children, I will come, but I won't answer from myself. I will answer through Ghazali. So that's how all the lessons are given, although the children learn many things from their grandparents, their parents, their teachers at school. So children understand that this wisdom is coming from the community as a whole. Here, Qasim blurted out, oh, Hajj Abdullah, truly our lives have been changed in a joyous way. Every day is now fun because whatever happens, whether difficult or not, we can see ways to understand it and use it to brighten our hearts. All right. Oh, there were so many things I wanted to teach you all. You know, that's the polishing, and this is different forms of najas. This is the little who polishes the outside, and inside is all the trash. Okay, go ahead. Next. All right. That's an incredible story about doing wudu. I'm just giving them a sense of what's inside of the books, just drawing, giving them a chance. This is the different levels of wudu, and this is the way you should be when you stand in prayer. You see, this when you stand in prayer, this gives a very good image for the children. Like this picture right here, the children are taught that when they're doing wudu, when you do your hands, you say, Allah, help me to do the right thing. Help me to say the right thing, listen to the right thing. When you're doing your feet, you are saying, Ya Allah, when I walk, let my feet take me to the right places. And here it says, Hassan's feet have taken him to help his mother, who is very pleased. This is a conscious way of doing wudu, where during wudu 5 times a day, you are actually practicing consciously polishing your heart. That's just more of the same story. That's beautiful. The children are told that if you make it, how important it is if you do wudu before you go to sleep, that you go, look how beautiful this is. Ghazali says, if you had problems and you needed help, could you go to visit the head of a company or a king or the president of your country? Would they have time for you? No, but Allah is always there. He wants you to come at all times with questions. Ghazali makes a very big deal about how whenever he said prayer shouldn't just be postures and phrases. It has to be, you have to be conscious of your mode of being. If you say subhanallah, you should stand there and really feel you are in a state before Allah, glorifying him. When you begin the prayer in the takbir, you have to bring yourself to remember who you're standing in front of. If you're saying Adina Sirata, don't just say it. Feel really contrite. Yes, I need guidance. This is interesting. The one before, trying to explain to children right there about what doing the sunnah and not just the farid, doing the extra. And someone has drawn the full bedroom and the small bedroom. He says, when you would give someone a gift, would you give it in beautiful wrapping or very plain? When you the human body, right? The human body, it has some things that are essential, the heart, the lungs, the feet. But isn't it beautiful that it has eyebrows and things that make it beautiful? So the difference between doing the sunnah and the farid is the beautification and the perfection. And he has wonderful images for explaining the sunnah. And then just to give you all an idea, this is the lady, by the way, who does the illustrations for us now. Go ahead. Is that included everyone in the books, keep going, are incredible. You know, for each chapter, you're given the core teachings, keep going, the Quran verse that matches it, the hadith, and all of the activities. You can just keep going. All right, these are just samples. And then this is my favorite book that I got the most out of teaching humility. This is my favorite story of all, is that when Ghazali explains that everything we have is on loan, it's a trust, right? The children realize that if they borrow something, if it's a loan, they have to return it, and they want to return it, but they forget that the skills and everything we're given in life is to be returned. Giving your best. I'm just going to stop here. That picture of the things. When we reached Egypt in 1969, we had very little. I mean, had nothing. And people would come and give us food and packages. And the first time someone came to our house, when they left, they put the gifts behind the couch. They didn't take the thanks from us. And I had never seen that concept, because we always hand people, here is a gift. And that was the lesson on charity. It was an incredible experience. Go ahead, the next one. I think we're at the very end here. Oh, that's, yeah, all right. And then just workbooks, just so you will see what it all looks like. That, yeah, on the left is Warathuddin, the son of Elijah Muhammad, making the Hajj picture we took. And then I even, that's me making my first Hajj. You know, where do you get the illustrations to put in these books? But anybody, and a family, Mubin's family, they were the actors through the whole thing. They were making the Hajj and they took pictures. Okay, next. As the teacher's manuals. And then one of our curriculum team, she got so upset that I made the Hajj book for older kids and parents that she wrote the whole story for little 5-year-olds. So she made a wonderful we included a children's book in there as well. That's it. All right. So I'm ready to hear from Sayyidah Lubna and from all the questions and answers. And alhamdulillah.
Well, firstly, I think on behalf of everybody here, we would like to really thank you so much, Sayyidah Aisha, because that was an incredible journey that you took us on through the whole of your life from the beginning. And then to go through all of those books with so many life lessons, it's a real honor for us and a privilege to be with you. So thank you so much for doing that for us today. Just to give you an idea of why I'm here, I was really blessed to have met Sister Aisha very early on when, just before the books were actually published. And I was blown away by the idea of, you know, Imam al-Ghazālī's Ihya being translated into something that we could use for children. I just couldn't even understand how that was physically possible. And so I was so excited about it. And I had 2 children of my own who were teens at the time, and I had 2 young primary children. And so I had gone through kind of with the older children, the normal madrasa curriculum, if you like. And I had studied myself in traditional Islamic sciences for 7 years. So I knew what was available. And I also felt what I felt was missing. And I think from when you watch this, you can see, subhanAllah, the huge impact that the Ghazali project has on the inner self, on the reason for things, on why are we doing all the things we're doing. You know, everything for us has been ritualistic practice, you know, and with the children, when you start with the children, you're thinking we need akhlaq. You know, we should be starting with akhlaq. We should be starting with Do you even believe in God? Do you even know that, that Allah is your creator? Do you know anything about him? And what happened when I was I actually was teaching in madrasa, and I was teaching the really young children, and I was teaching the teenagers. And the young ones were so cute, and they were so into it, and they were so excited, and they gained a lot from it. But when you saw those same children going through and getting to the end, they were bored. They felt like, we've done all this over and over again. It wasn't relatable, and we all know this, we all feel this, that, it's not improving your life. So when I heard about this project and when I started to understand a little bit about what it was about, I was completely blown away by the idea that we could actually give such deep, meaningful reasoning for everything that we're doing, things that are actually going to help us to navigate through life, things that are going to hugely impact on the mental health of our young people, even ourselves. I mean, all of these lessons, as you heard Sister Aisha so beautifully and eloquently describe, they're for children, but they actually spoke to us. We actually understood it. There were such small things, but it was like, oh my God, that I totally get that. And so I was blown away. I started, I actually made a really difficult decision to stop teaching in the madrasa, take my younger children out, and I've been teaching for the last 5-6 years. So I was able to take the children, my younger children, through this and learn, as she said, learn myself. I think, studied, like I said, for 7 years, and I think I actually understood it when I was teaching my kids. And I saw the impact that it had on the children, and I've seen the impact it's had on the children. And I felt so strongly that this was not just for small children. There were so many lessons in here for young adults. There were so many lessons for us. And so, alhamdulillah, I started to develop the curriculum for older children, because my children by this time were getting to 10 plus, 12. And then I was thinking, okay, we need to take it into, 14, 15, 16. And, is it something that we can do? So alhamdulillah, we have quite successfully been able to do that. So the question is regarding Sana has, mashallah, 2 boys, teenage boys. And her question is regarding, the teenagers, that what can we give, what advice does Imam al-Ghazālī give to teenagers, or to all of us really, that helps them to navigate the contemporary problems in the modern world, the things that are really affecting young people and really all of us at the moment. Everyone's worried about social media, right? But the real thing, the real essence of social media, the issue of social media, is based on insecurity. A lot of it's based on, looking at someone else's pictures and seeing what they're doing and feeling insecure, and then envy, envying what others have and, wishing you had it. So there's that. Then you've got the issue, I think, especially for us in Dubai as well, maybe more so here than anywhere, but I think everywhere, that equating happiness with wealth, material things, wealth and beauty, to the most obvious things, right? And then also, what was my third thing? I had a point. Yes, the point that Sister Aisha made was about the breakdown of the traditional family, so that you're losing age-old wisdom. You're losing, maybe the parents don't have as much time to give to the children when they're really struggling with things, or with issues, or with problems, or with struggles. And there used to be a village, there used to be the grandparents, there used to be someone who could fill that gap, and that's no longer there. So if we look at, for example, the envy and the insecurity, this, as you've heard, we address so much, through the Ghazali project, giving tools to teenagers about how to change things from one vice to a virtue. So, for example, the opposite of envy. Does anyone put it out? The opposite of envy. What is the opposite of envy?
Contentment.
Rashid. Sorry, Sister Aisha?
I just said contentment with what you've been given.
Contentment with what you've been given and all of the things that you've just said, and also like wanting the best for someone else. And so, you know, you then give them the tools. So you talk about envy, of course, give them all the, you know, the problems that you face when you're envious and the repercussions of being envious. And so you give them all of that. And then you talk about recognizing it. So it's like, you know, you can't fix, like if you're an alcoholic, unless you recognize you're an alcoholic, right? So you can't fix envy unless you recognize that you have it. And we all have it in some form. And then you sort of stop and say, okay, how can you flip that to its opposite? So let's say, for example, I had a class with a group of students in the UK, very intelligent, like super simple, you know, they were top of the class, everything. A girl, Layla's like 13 years old. I do this class about envy, we're talking about envy. She gives me the 2 terms in Arabic on envy, you know, what the differences are. I thought at the end of the class, is there any point in teaching them because they're so smart? Just after the class, her sister goes to a coffee shop, gets a hot chocolate, comes back, and immediately Layla from across the room says, "Oi, that's so unfair, Hannah. You know, how come you've got hot chocolate?" And I thought, oh my God. So of course I grabbed Layla and I said, "Layla, we've just studied this." And she said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "So how do you feel?" She's like, "I feel envious that she's got hot chocolate." And I said, "Okay, but now how are you supposed to feel?" And she says, "Oh God, I'm supposed to want the best. I'm supposed to be happy that she's got this blessing." And then she said, "God, Auntie Ludna, that's really hard." And so there's a difference between, you know, knowing something and knowing something. So we go through these lessons, and then in terms of so many things, subhanAllah, but I don't want to go on too much. But like, for example, Imam al-Ghazālī's life itself has this beautiful lesson of, you know, that there's good in everything that happens to you. Not only that there's a reason that everything that happens to you, but there's actually good in everything that happens to you. That's super hard. That's super hard to actually know that. Right? Like you can say, oh, there was a reason, there was a reason, there was a reason. But, you know, there's questions then around that. What do you mean there's good in everything? What about what's happening, as we know, all over the world? You know? And there's beautiful lessons where we learn that there genuinely is good in everything. There is something in there. There's a reason for why you're going through that. And inshallah, it's either elevating you or it's cleansing you, or there's some way that you are going to find in your life that moves you forward on your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So like, if we just take that lesson, if you could just teach your children, or I could teach my children that one lesson, imagine how that would affect their mental health. Like just think about, you know, I've got to get those grades, I've got to get into that uni, I've got to get that career, if I don't, I'm finished. If I don't, I failed. And so, you know, just teaching the lesson that, you know, do everything with ihsan, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed you to do so, because, you know, we do everything with excellence, so that's why you're striving, so you never stop striving. But the result is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you don't get that job, or you don't get that, you know, grade or whatever it is, then, you know, the kids are like, okay, you know, I get it, like there's another path for me, it's fine, it's going to be okay. And that's huge for all of us. So like that's 2 examples I could give you. Like I have like a lot, but I don't want to go on, inshallah. But if anyone else has a question, yes.
I think I have a 12-year-old. I don't want to make it personal because everybody has their own issues. But for me, the main issue is exposure. How do you stop that exposure? This is what scares me, and you can't stop it because, so it's like I think as parents now, I just feel sorry for the youth, because at that time we weren't bombarded with constant daggers, you know, like we had our peacefulness, you know, there wasn't intrusion from the outside, and now that's all changed. So for me as with a 12-year-old, it's like, you can't throw the internet out, window, right? So for me, it's a constant question, like, what do you do about the exposure? Because
Well, that's quite something, isn't it? I think what we have to do is, since they're seeing all these things anyway, that this Ghazali project isn't just for the children to have these ideas. Parents literally have to help them apply all of the ideas to what's going on in their life. Even, for example, if I would sit with my children and they're watching a film, when they're doing that, I relate what they're doing to some of the principles we're studying, because they need our help in relating what they're learning to what they're actually going through. So it's not just a matter of handing them book or handing them lessons. We as parents have to understand these various issues and be ready to show them how to use that situation to develop a certain virtue or a certain consciousness. But I mean, we have to be on hand for them, honestly.
If I talk about my own experience with my children, I think the greatest thing about, alhamdulillah, the Ghazali project is that the ideal thing that you want for your kids, right, is that you want them to be able to navigate it themselves. That's what we're all hoping for. We're hoping that they're going to have enough sense, whatever you want to call it, that they, from within themselves, they will either turn one way or the other. Now, that might be like, really hopeful, but I can only talk from the experience of having taught my kids. And I have to say, alhamdulillah, so far, like I've got a 27-year-old, a 23-year-old, and then I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. So I'm talking from like, not just kind of like that generation, but also the younger generation. And I've seen from them teaching them these principles through the Ghazali project, and there's many, many things that have not been spoken about. I found that they, alhamdulillah, have managed so far, by the grace of God, and I think obviously a lot of du'as, which obviously we can't underestimate the du'as of a mother, have helped them so far, thus far, to navigate well. Alhamdulillah. And, we talk about everything in terms of what's going on. We'll just talk about it. I'll tell them what I'm worried about. Like if my daughter says, I want to go here, or I want to do this, or I want to wear that, we'll have a discussion about it and just say, okay, well, this is what I'm worried about. Like if there's a sleepover or something, I'll just say, okay, well, I'm actually worried about this, 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 and this. I won't sort of say yes, no. I'll kind of try to explain the reasoning why I'm feeling this way. And I think that that's not enough. And if they don't have some grounding, some Islamic understanding and some connection to their spirituality and to, to wanting to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, like when you've got that, and then you've got the guidance, and then you're allowing them to kind of make decisions, then inshallah, so far, alhamdulillah, they're sort of okay. I mean, I'm not saying that they're perfect or that they're never going to do anything wrong, but I don't think we can, like you said, I don't know how we can limit it. I feel like we have to give them the tools to navigate it as best as we can, inshallah. Was there any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm really far.
That's okay.
Thank you so much, Sister Aisha. I think part of the reconciling theme that we're all talking about, my main question would be, life will happen, and I think Sister Aisha spoke about this. She said, there's lying and there's, greed and everything. And then I think at one point, these teachings will not, they won't be as impactful. I mean, the impact of today is amazing, but I'll have my first Zoom call tomorrow morning, and I'm sure I'll lose it somehow. So how do we really take the essence to build into the decision-making framework of these children for years to come, for all of us, I guess? Because, that's not a lot, but like, parents will die, their best friend will get into a car crash from overdose or something, and those aren't exactly, they're very detached from I mean, in a way, they're very attached to the Ghazali concepts, but in their application and in our human capacity to understand, they're quite detached. And so how do we really bridge that gap?
I think that the reason for starting the project when they're really little is you start to build up something in themselves where they start to really be aligned with the best in themselves, you know, and then, I mean, we just have to be present. And when anything happens, we help interpret it for them so that they start being able to do it themselves, to relate to all of these deep ideas. Just constantly. I mean, even if I see them watching a film and I join them, I right away point out, oh, look what happens when people bully people. Look at the result, what that brings on, so that you're constantly making them see the reality in front of them through these foundational principles, which we hope that have become part of their very outlook. I think it's giving them a new outlook, that life isn't just about acquiring things and materialism and being popular and bragging. You know, it's really the direction is we have to look at life and understand it and reframe it. I think maybe that's what we have to do for them.
I think also, I mean, if I talk about myself, you know, I started my religious journey when my daughter was 8. And I think there was a reality which was, I knew that if I wasn't doing it, there's no way I could impart it to my children. And if I didn't know the answers to the questions, there's no way I can reinforce any of that to my kids. And so I think for myself, it was a question of like, I need to know. Like, I need to know the answers to why they're suffering in the world. Like, I need to know the answers to, you know, these really hard questions about when really bad things happen, like, you know, how can God allow it? And, you know, these really tough questions. And we all have those questions. And so I think it was a journey I had to go on myself. And then I sort of, alhamdulillah, like realized that actually, you know, what I'm learning is then going to naturally be imparted to my kids. And so I think it's like, actually, like I said, I really mean it. And I think Sister Aisha feels the same way, that, you know, we did it for the kids because that's the motivation. But the reality is it was for us. And the more that we understand why those things are happening, the more we're able to support our children when they go through those things. And like, you know, even now when my daughter's like 27 and I have a son that's 23 and he's studying abroad and he's lonely and he's finding it really hard. And, you know, even now he'll be on the phone and we'll be talking about it and discussing it and reinforcing the ideas. But of course, like if I don't know it and if I don't believe it, then it's like completely pointless because I can't impart that to my kids. So I definitely think it's like the continuance of it, and I think it's a very important point raised, is that this project is actually, if it really wants to work, it has to be about the teacher, the children, and the parents as a whole.
I'd just like to add something. I feel like building this lens for kids is like building a muscle. You can't just go to the gym once and expect to be strong. You need to go to the gym every day to be strong. So this isn't something you just teach once or twice. This is something you go through every single day, something you reinforce constantly. And I think that's the point of life. You relearn and you fall and you relearn. But building these virtues, it's not easy. It's not meant to be. You're meant to go through life trying your best to develop it. And I think if the goal is remembrance and trying again, you get it.
You know, that's the whole thing about if you start, you see, I go back to former beautiful Islamic communities or what it was like being in Egypt, where everybody from their parents and grandparents had been copying the Sunnah. And so it settles in and they actually are more generous than we are in the West. It just takes, but you know, it's exactly what you said about the muscle. The more you practice it, the more it becomes second nature. Since we don't have the advantage where I live, or maybe where you live, of having the whole society doing this thing. We have to start somewhere and give them practices and things that can help them. Help them start to enjoy acting from their highest level of being. It's a big project, but it's doable. And just as Sayyidah Lubna has been teaching young people and had great effects, it actually works. But I mean, I myself, I'm an older person, right? I would say this saved my life. This project saved it, because I mean, I've been in Islam since 1966 or something like that, but I didn't deeply understand at the deepest level what I had and what every component of the ibadat actually was doing and meant. And I think otherwise people are doing things in a sort of a do's and don'ts culture, or if you don't do it, you're going to hell kind of thing, but that's not working for the children or young people of today. And I think what Ghazali offers is actually understanding the inner workings. The book I'm working on right now, book 24, The Bane of the Tongue, is preparing it right now for young people, but it's changed my life. I didn't realize there are 20 things I'm doing when I'm talking that I'm actually bragging or boasting, or there are other ways you can backbite just by raising your eyebrow. I mean, this book is becoming the greatest tool I've ever had in my life with dealing with myself on a moment-to-moment basis. And this is going to be wonderful for young people, because think of the harm we do when we speak. And Ghazali is a genius on this. His metaphors, his stories, like you never get over them. So I think we have to hope that some of this is retained. Sometimes you hear a story and you never forget it. Some of what I've heard from Ghazali over the past 50 years has been key. And so I think, listening to what you've just said, how do we get people to practice this and strengthen their muscles? We just have to go ahead, and if this project can be put in not as a replacement, as a supplement in Islamic studies departments, in high schools, colleges, it would be such a great beginning, getting this kind of, it's a tool. What Ghazali, this material is an incredible tool for realizing and practicing at a deeper level what we've been taught already. So that's what I'm hoping, that it can be available as a supplement in education.
I just want to add as well that, to give hope to all of us, and to, because sometimes you think oh God, my kids are too old now. It's the boat's gone, how am I going to implement this now? And I have to say, exactly what Sayyidah Aisha said, obviously as an older person, even for myself, and, I started with one of my older son when he was 14. I didn't really teach him much prior to that. And my daughter hardly got anything, to be fair, because I started very late in her life with the Ghazali project. And I can say, hand on heart, and I would, I believe in it so much that I would dedicate my life to this, because I honestly cannot see any other method or any other way, any other teaching that is genuinely having an effect, a positive effect. And, even starting late, it's like we're learning now, right? We're adults. It's never too late. It's 100% never too late. And sometimes kids at 14 or at 17 or at, have an existential crisis at that time because they're going through real hardship, and that can be a real turning point for them in their lives. And so, I'm so in love with the teachings, because they really work, and they really help, and they've helped me, they've helped my kids, they've helped our community. We've got kids, it's not like some people think, okay, well, it's fine for the kids who've been in madrasa all their lives and have this real religious background and stuff. What about everybody else, right? And I can tell you that I've been involved with children, for example, like I said, living in the UK, 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds going to normal English schools with all of the stuff you're talking about, more than we have here, because here we're quite protected. And I can't tell you how this has helped them. I cannot tell you, subhanAllah, like how we have a dialogue, we're able to talk about things. You know, they see sense in stuff. It's like, oh, actually, I get it now. You know, prayer actually is basically mindfulness. You know, oh, fast. I mean, there's so much more than that, but, you know, let's just be honest. Like, mindfulness, all the rage, prayer, right? Intermittent fasting, really good for your body, fasting. What are we witnessing at the moment that's horrendous is everyone, all of the vices, all of the problems, the root cause is all greed, right? SubhanAllah, zakat.
Yeah, look at that.
You know, zakat is one of the things, there's many things. Zakat is a cure for greed. You know, Hajj is basically cures racism. I don't really think I have to even explain that because I think you all know how. And, you know, and then you go through a dress rehearsal of death in your life in Hajj. And it forces people out of where they live and it makes them meet everyone from all over the world and see diversity. You know, subhanAllah, think about that back in the day. Like now it's like, okay, yeah, we're all global citizens. But imagine forcing people out of their little villages that they lived in. You know, so when you start seeing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan for us as just only benefit for us, like all of those things is literally only doing good for us, it blows your mind. You don't see it the same. It's not like, oh God, I have to go and pray. You're thinking, oh, actually, this is really good for me for so many different reasons. And actually, we all know now how good fasting is for you, you know. And if we can actually understand, we're all looking at how do we solve this big world crisis of climate change and, you know, big pharma and obviously what's going on. It's, subhanAllah, greed is the bottom of everything. And, you know, how do we cure this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an understanding of money, the fact that it's coming from Him. It doesn't even belong to us. It's on loan. Like, we have it so that, you know, we're supposed to give it. We're not doing anyone any favors, you know? And I couldn't get over this, you know, when they say, how do you get over greed? One of the things is just keep giving. I mean, subhanAllah, like our religion is like beyond, it's amazing. It's perfect. So I think that when you can give that understanding to young people, I mean, and you give it to us, it makes a huge difference, inshallah.
Yeah, and just what you mentioned, you know, about ages. I mean, I only really took this on at age 70, and it changed my life. It wasn't too late, you know, to finally get it. And I realized something Lubna has just pointed out. With all of us looking at Gaza right now, we can actually help our young people to see all the things that aren't being practiced that are causing that, you know, as a way. It's true. I mean, she's saying she's given her life to it. This is what I was born to do, you know, and there's no stopping now because I've never seen a system or ideas that were effective except this for me, you know, deeply effective. You know, we can all do the outward things, but to get to the point where they're inward is really something else. I mean, we've been given such an incredible faith. I mean, and in the book of Hajj, I mean, I've done a couple of Hajjs and millions of Umrahs. It's like I had never done them until I took the Ghazali, and I took the children's book and made an Umrah with it last February. And it was, we've all, you know, you get in your vehicle or your van and you're leaving Jeddah to go to the Haram. Well, Ghazali says, the vehicle that's taking you there must have been a camel or a cart in his day, but the bus, he says, understand that as a bier, the piece of wood your dead body is on, taking you back to God. In other words, when you're leaving Jeddah, you are really dead. You're dead to this world and you are returning. Imagine seeing it like that rather than just, we're making the Umrah today. Oh, and let's whatever. And then, I mean, to think how many times I've started Bismillah, Allahu Akbar to the black stone. And then Ghazali says, we've all heard Sayyidina Omar alayhi salam said, I wouldn't kiss the black stone had I not seen the prophets kiss it. And Ghazali said, well, that's not it. That's not it. What it is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam, in which we all were, am I not your Lord? We were all there, and everyone who will be born till the end was there. Am I not your Lord? And Adam said, Allah, yes. Lest Allah said, on the day of reckoning, you plead ignorant of this. So it's a contract every one of you and I made. So that contract is inside of the black stone. So when you begin your pilgrimage, you are reconfirming the primordial contract each of us already made with Allah. And then within 3 or 4 days, if you're on the Hajj, there you are wearing your ihram, your grave clothes, begging his forgiveness. So within 3 or 4 days, you have actually performed the entire cycle of human existence and coming to an end. Imagine as a community being given a right as powerful as that. I mean, but had I known that on a previous Hajj? No. I just didn't know what I was doing, right? So, I mean, Ghazali can take us at any point. I mean, really, every one of you that we're all here together, I just can't stress enough how transformative it is in terms of just the lens through which we're seeing. What we're trying to do with our young people is give them a different lens through which to see everything. Put the lens we were given in focus, as it were. I'm at the stage, we talked about the checklist, the children drawing the heart, and me having a checklist on my desk of things I've got to get done, go to the dry cleaners, pick up lunch, that kind of thing, or all my projects. But I'm now thinking, when I'm reading The Bane of the Tongue, I have got to put a checklist up, because I have to keep it in mind what I do that is totally incorrect. It's not even, by the way, Ghazali points out, it's not even, backbiting is not just speaking. We're doing it all the time in our conversations, subtly. But he points out that it's not just backbiting, in which we're not just hurting other people, we're destroying our essences, by the way. It's a double-edged sword. But he points out that we backbite all the time when our thinking. He said, you have your real golden heart, and then you have your nafs in there, never shuts up, thinking, oh my goodness, look at that person. Oh, look at the car they're driving. He said, we are already backbiting in our minds. And I told my 10-year-old granddaughter about this, and she said, Granny, it's going on all the time. She said, and Ghazali says, when we're doing that, we're making assumptions based often on no fact. And my little Medina said to me, Granny, when I look out the window and I see the homeless, I think, yuck. And then she said, I don't know their circumstances. And she said, there's a little boy in my school, and I don't like him, he's spoiled. But I hadn't thought, my goodness, maybe what has happened in his life that's made him this way. This is a 10-year-old who hears this idea and can immediately use it in her life, because, this is an ongoing process. But I guess these works are an incredible tool and a great key for making us not only aware, but it helps us to act on this awareness.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Unfortunately, we'd love to continue. As you know, we talk endlessly, but we have to end now. So we're so grateful for you to be here. And
it's been an honor, and I hope we can all find ways just to work arm in arm, bit by bit, I mean, it was so funny for me to imagine that I started this whole process to this moment that I'm with you has been just under 60 years, right? So I have to look at that, what's going on here,
Thank you so much. I think